In this video, we're going to learn how to find and print the smallest word in a string using C. So if we have a string like this with a sentence with several words, the smallest word in this string would actually just be A here. If we deleted A, the smallest word would then be with. So whatever it is, we want to find and print that smallest word in a string. To help us solve this problem, we're going to include a couple libraries. We'll include the string.h library, because this library includes several helpful functions for working with strings. We'll also include stdlib.h. Because we're not sure how large the word is going to be, we're going to dynamically allocate memory to store it using malloc, and that's included in stdlib. We'll make a function to actually solve this problem. We'll say car star smallest word, and then car star s. So the smallest word function is going to accept the string itself as an argument. And what it's going to return is a pointer to a string containing the smallest word in this string. So let's provide a definition of the function down here. And the way we're going to solve this problem is we're going to read through the string one character at a time. But as we do, we're going to flip back and forth between reading through a word and reading through non-word characters. So we're going to have non-word characters, and those are going to be things like space and period and other characters like comma as well. And what we'll do is alternate between reading in a word and reading through those non-space characters. We're going to use a function called strchr in the string.h library to help us recognize the start of non-word characters and the start of word characters. And as we read in each word, we're going to keep track of a smallest word we've found so far. And then at the end of the function, we'll return a pointer to that word. So the first thing we'll do is figure out the length of the string. We'll say int len is equal to str lens. And we'll use this length to let us know how many characters we have to read through in the string. We'll actually do a bit of a check here. We'll say if len is equal to 0, just return null. Because we can't really find a smallest word in a string that has a length of 0. We're going to need several more variables to help us. We'll make a variable called count that's going to keep track of the count of characters in the current word that we're reading through. We'll make a variable called min that's going to keep track of the length of the smallest word found so far in terms of its number of characters. We'll make a character array called temp buffer that's going to be 256 characters in length. And we're going to store whatever word we're currently reading in into the temp buffer. Now, if that word in the temp buffer is the smallest word we found so far, we're going to store it into the min word character array that's also going to be 256 characters long. We'll also make a non-words character array that's going to be set to our non-word characters. And we'll make our non-word characters space, period, comma, semicolon, a new line represented with \n, and a tab represented with \t. And those are going to be the non-word characters for the purposes of this video. We could always modify this though and add more and make it more comprehensive. But for just demonstrating the concept, this is enough. We'll also make a counter variable I, and we'll set it equal to 0. And we're going to use I as our index into this string as we loop through it, one character at a time. Next, we'll make an outer loop, and the outer loop is going to check to see when we've reached the end of the string by checking to see if I is less than the length of the string, because we're going to be using I as our index into the string and incrementing it in this loop. Now, this loop is going to have 3 sections basically. The first section is going to be a while loop that loops through each word in this string here. The second portion is going to be an if statement that checks to see if the word we just read in is smaller than the smallest word we found so far. Because if it is, it's the new smallest word. And the third section is going to be another loop that's going to loop through non-word characters until we've reached the next word again. So first we'll make that first loop. We'll say count is equal to 0 because we're going to use count to count the characters in the word. Then we'll say while I is less than the length of the string. And we have to do this here because it's possible that as reading in the word, we reach the end of the string because the string ends with that word. Next, we'll say here, if strchr non-words s at index I doesn't equal null, break. So like the strlen function, the strchr function comes from the string.h library. And the way it works is that it tries to find this character in this string. And if it can find this character in this string, it's going to return a pointer to the first occurrence of that character in the string. If it can't find the character, it's going to return null. So here we're looking at the current character in the string as we go through it one character at a time using our index variable I. And we're saying here, if we can't find the character in the string, we want to continue looping through the remaining characters in this word. If we can find this character that we're currently looking at in our string in the non-word string, we want to stop because we've identified a non-word character. In other words, we've identified the end of the word. And that's going to be when strchr returns a non-null value. Because if it can find this character that we're currently looking at in non-words, it returns a non-null value. And that's where we're going to stop, is when it returns a non-null value. Otherwise, we're reading in a word character because that character is not causing strchr to return a non-null value. Instead, it's returning null. In other words, the character is not found in our non-words string here. So what we'll do is, in that case, store that character of the word in the temp buffer. So we'll say temp buffer at count is equal to s at index I. Then we'll increment I, and we'll increment count. So we're using I as our index into our string s. Count becomes our index into temp buffer because we're storing this word that we're currently reading in into temp buffer. Now, when we're done this, when we have identified that first non-word character and we have broken out of this loop, we're going to want to check to see if temp buffer contains the smallest word found so far. So the first thing we'll do is set temp buffer at count to the null terminator to properly end the string that we've stored into temp buffer. And then we can check to see if the count of characters in that word is less than the current minimum words count. So we'll say if count is less than min. And if that's the case, this word we've just read in is the new smallest word in the string. So we'll say here min is now equal to count. And we'll copy using the string copy function into the min word character array the word stored in the temp buffer character array. So string copy is another helpful function we get with the string.h library, and it copies this string here into this string here. Next, we'll make the loop that goes through the non-word characters. So we'll say here, while I is less than len, if strchr non-words si is equal to null, then we're going to do a break. So this here is a lot like this up here, but this time we're doing a break when the function returns null. And that's because we're kind of doing the opposite of the last loop. In this loop, we want to loop through the non-word characters. So long as the current character in the string that we're looking at is in the non-words character array, we want to continue this loop. So remember, strchr is going to return a pointer to this character's first occurrence in this string. But if it can't find the character, if the current character is not in the non-word string, then it's going to return null. And that's when we're going to break. Otherwise, what we'll do is just increment I. just to skip along to the next word in the string. So at this point, having continuously alternated through the words and non-word characters of the string, keeping track of the smallest word we found so far, we should now be ready to return the smallest word in the string. So what we'll do at this point is create a pointer to that word in dynamically allocated memory. And we'll return a pointer to that word. So we'll say car star word is equal to malloc size of car times min plus 1. So we're going to use malloc to dynamically allocate space to store the word on the heap. And we need this many characters, min plus 1, because we know the word has min characters, and we need one more character to store the null terminator. So we multiply the size that it takes to store a character by that many characters to get the amount of space we need on the heap. And then malloc is going to return a pointer to that space that we're going to store into word. Next, we'll copy into that space the min word. So we're going to copy from the min word car array, where we've stored the min word, into word. And then finally here, we can return word. We can return a pointer to that string that we've stored on the heap. So again, the way the function works is that we continually read in a word, then we go through the non-word characters, then we read in a word, then we go through the non-word characters again and again, where we're using this to detect the beginning of non-word characters, and we're using this to detect the beginning of word characters. And in between reading in words, we're checking to see if the word we've just found is the new smallest word. Now, the one special case we've got to handle is the very first word. So at the time we read in the very first word, we've got min set to a special value, -1. That doesn't really make any sense. You can't have a smallest word length of -1. So for that first word, no matter what it is, we're going to set it to be our smallest word. And we'll detect that that's the case if min is equal to -1. So here we'll say if count is less than min, or min is equal to -1, then set this word to be the current smallest word. So here we're checking to see if min is set to that special value. And if it is, we know it's the first word in our string, and we're going to make that, by default, the smallest word in the string found so far. Now let's try to test out this function. Up here, we'll call smallest word. We'll say car star word is equal to smallest word, and we'll call it with our string s. And we'll store into word here the memory address, the pointer of that string on the heap. Then we'll print out the word. We'll say printf %s\n word. And then finally, we'll call free with word, because word is a pointer to dynamically allocated memory. And technically, when we're done with dynamically allocated memory, we should free it as a best practice. So we'll save and run the program. And we get the word A. And that makes sense, because A is the smallest word in that sentence. What if we delete this? If we save and run this, we now get with. And that makes sense, because with now is the smallest word in that string. We'll try one more thing. We'll get rid of with. We'll save and run it, and we now get words. And again, that makes sense because words now is the smallest word in that string. So this is how we can find and print the smallest word in a string using C. Check out portfoliocourses.com, where we'll help you build a portfolio that will impress employers, including courses to help you develop C programming projects.